In November 1910, 7 men boarded a private train car in New Jersey. They used fake names. They told no one where they were going. And in 9 days, they designed the machine that would create every billionaire alive today. Here's what's disturbing. Their plan worked so perfectly that 114 years later, the same system still runs. Most people don't even know it exists. But if you understand how it works, you'll finally understand why some people get rich during every crisis, while everyone else loses everything. I'm Walter Grant, and welcome to Draxiver. This isn't conspiracy. This is documented history. The names are in congressional records. The meeting location is now a museum, and the consequences are in your bank account right now. Let me show you the train. The fake names. The 36 hours that nearly destroyed America 3 years earlier. And the exact psychological trick that makes this system invisible to 99% of people. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And you'll realize that the greatest wealth transfers in history weren't accidents. They were engineering. But before I show you the secret meeting, I need to take you to a moment when the entire American economy had 36 hours left to live. October 1907, Manhattan, the day the money stopped. Picture a line stretching 4 city blocks, men in suits, women holding children, all waiting outside a building with marble columns and bronze doors. The Knickerbocker Trust Company, the second largest trust in America. And it was dying. Here's what was happening inside. Tellers were counting money as fast as their hands could move. Every customer wanted their savings, all at once, and there wasn't enough. This is called a bank run, and it exploits a dirty secret about how banks actually work. When you deposit $100, the bank doesn't keep $100. It keeps maybe $10. The other $90 gets loaned out. This is called fractional reserve banking. It works perfectly until everyone wants their money on the same day. So what happens when 8,000 people show up demanding $100 each, and the bank only has enough cash for 1,000 of them? The first 1,000 get paid. The other 7,000 get nothing. This isn't a glitch. This is how every bank on earth still works today. On October 22, 1907, Knickerbocker Trust couldn't pay. The president walked out at noon, told the crowd the bank was closed, and a woman in the front of the line screamed. That scream started a chain reaction, because if Knickerbocker was empty, what about their bank? By sunset, lines formed at every major trust in Manhattan. By the next morning, the panic had spread to 5 states. By October 24th, the New York Stock Exchange was hours from shutting down permanently. And here's the terrifying part. There was no Federal Reserve, no government bailout system, no lender of last resort. The entire American economy had 36 hours before complete collapse. So who saved it? Not the president, not Congress. One 70-year-old man with a yacht and a bad temper. And what he did in those 36 hours would give his family power that still exists today. His name was John Pierpont Morgan. And this is where the story gets dark. J.P. Morgan wasn't a politician. He was a banker. But by 1907, he was arguably the most powerful man in America. He controlled railroads. He controlled steel. He had personally financed wars. When Morgan walked into a room, presidents waited. Not the other way around. And on October 24, 1907, he locked 40 bank executives in his private library and told them no one was leaving until they saved the country or bankrupted themselves trying. Here's what happened inside. Morgan sat in his favorite chair playing solitaire. The other bankers argued about who would contribute money to stop the panic. Every hour, another messenger would arrive with news. Another bank was failing. The stock exchange had 90 minutes of cash left. The city was running out of physical currency. At 4:45 a.m., Morgan stood up. He was 70 years old. He had been awake for 40 hours, and he told the room, "This is the plan. You will all sign, or I let it all collapse." The bankers looked at each other. They were being asked to commit $25 million of their own money. In 1907 dollars, that's roughly $800 million today. To save their competitors, to save the system, one by one, they signed. Morgan had saved America. With a bluff, a locked door, and the psychological pressure of watching someone play solitaire while the world burned. But here's what the history books leave out. Morgan made money on the panic. Massive money. While everyone else was selling, Morgan was buying. He picked up companies at 70% discounts. He acquired railroads for pennies on the dollar. And 3 years later, he would create a system that ensured he'd never have to bluff again. Because Morgan realized something in that library. He had just saved the entire American economy, using his own personal wealth. What if there was a machine that did this automatically? What if that machine never ran out of money? And what if he controlled it? That's when 7 men boarded a train. November 1910, 3 years after the panic, a private rail car departed from Hoboken, New Jersey. The car had no markings. The passengers used first names only. And one of them, a senator, had told his own wife he was going duck hunting. Let me tell you who was actually on that train. Nelson Aldrich, senator from Rhode Island, father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr., Abraham Piatt Andrew, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, Henry Davison, Senior Partner at J.P. Morgan, Charles Norton, President of First National Bank of New York, Benjamin Strong, Lieutenant of J.P. Morgan, Frank Vanderlip, President of National City Bank, and Paul Warburg, partner at Kuhn, Loeb & Co., add up the wealth these 7 men controlled. It was roughly 1/4 of the entire world's wealth. On a single train, using fake names, going to a private island off the coast of Georgia, Jekyll Island. The location, Jekyll Island, was owned by J.P. Morgan's hunting club. No reporters, no witnesses. Servants were told only to use first names. If anyone asked, they were going hunting. And in 9 days, they would design the most powerful financial institution in human history. Here's what they built: a central bank that could create unlimited money. That was owned by private banks. That answered to no voters. And that could bail out the entire financial system without any individual banker risking their own fortune. They called it the Federal Reserve System. But here's the psychological genius. They knew Americans hated central banks. Andrew Jackson had killed the previous one in 1836, so they didn't call it a central bank. They called it a reserve system. They put federal in the name to make it sound governmental. And they spread it across 12 cities to make it seem decentralized. It worked. Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. President Wilson signed it. And almost no one understood what had actually been created. A private organization with governmental powers. The ability to print money from nothing. And a permanent solution to the problem J.P. Morgan had faced in his library. Morgan died 4 months before the Federal Reserve opened. But his design lived on. And for the next 111 years, that design will create a pattern that explains every financial crisis, every bailout, and every billionaire who seems to get richer while everyone else gets poorer. Let me show you how it works. Here's the pattern Morgan's system created. And once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. Stage 1, easy money. The Federal Reserve lowers interest rates. Borrowing becomes cheap. Everyone takes on debt. Asset prices rise. Everyone feels wealthy. Stage 2, the bubble. Easy money creates excess. Housing in 2008. Stocks in 1929. Crypto in 2021. Everyone believes it will go up forever. The smart money starts quietly selling to the excited money. Stage 3, the crash. Something breaks. Prices fall. The people who borrowed too much can't pay. Banks start failing. Panic spreads. Stage 4, the rescue. The Federal Reserve steps in. It creates new money from nothing. It buys the failing assets. It saves the system. But here's the critical part. Who gets rescued? Banks get rescued. Bondholders get rescued. Asset owners get rescued. But the regular person who lost their job, who lost their house, They don't get a bailout. They get unemployment. Stage 5, the transfer. After the crash, prices are low. The people with cash buy everything cheap. The people with debt lose everything. When prices recover, the wealth has moved. From the many to the few. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just how the incentives work. The rich bought cheap real estate and stocks. By 1939, wealth concentration was higher than before the crash. Crash billionaire count in America, 403. By 2024, 813. The number doubled after the crisis. March 2020. Crash. The Federal Reserve printed $4.5 trillion in 18 months. Asset prices exploded. Billionaires added $2.1 trillion to their net worth in 1 year. While 22 million people lost their jobs, this isn't because billionaires are smarter. It's because they understand the system. They know the pattern. And they know the Federal Reserve will always save asset prices. Because saving asset prices is saving the banks. And saving the banks is the only thing the system was designed to do. So here's the question that changed how I see everything. Was the 1907 panic really an accident? Or was it useful? I'm going to tell you something that sounds like conspiracy. But it's actually just documented history interpreted differently. Before the 1907 panic, there was no political support for a central bank. Americans remembered Andrew Jackson. They distrusted concentrated financial power. There was no way Congress would create the Federal Reserve. After the 1907 panic, everyone was terrified. The economy had nearly collapsed. And suddenly, a central bank seemed reasonable, even necessary. Here's what history shows. The panic started when rumors spread about specific banks. Those rumors were traced back to specific newspaper articles. Those newspapers were owned by the same interests that later designed the Federal Reserve. Did Morgan engineer the panic? We don't have a smoking gun, but we do know this. He profited massively from it. He used it to eliminate competition. And he used the fear it created to build a permanent system that made his interests safer forever. Whether it was engineered or not doesn't actually matter. Because what matters is simpler and more disturbing. The people who understood the system got richer from the crisis. The people who didn't understand lost everything. And that pattern has repeated every 10 to 15 years for over a century. Who bought Goldman Sachs stock at the bottom? Warren Buffett. He got terms no regular investor could access. He made $3 billion on the deal. March 2020. Who was buying when everyone was selling? The same people who always buy. Because they know the Fed will always print. They know the assets will always recover. They know the system was built to protect them. And here's the twist that should make you angry. You paid for it. When the Fed prints money, it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from inflation. Your dollars buy less. Your savings erode. Your wages stagnate while asset prices explode. This is called inflation tax. It's never voted on. It's never debated. It just happens. And it transfers wealth from people who work for money to people who own assets that the Fed protects every single time. So what do you do with this information? You have 3 options. Option 1, ignore it. Keep your savings in cash. Watch inflation eat 3 to 5% per year. Retire with half the purchasing power you expected. Option 2, fight it. Good luck. The system has survived 111 years. It survived world wars. It survived protests. It survived politicians who promised to change it. It's still here. Option 3, learn the pattern. Understand the cycle. Know when the Fed is printing. Know when assets are cheap. Position yourself on the right side of the transfer. This is what the wealthy teach their children. Not how to work hard, how to position correctly. Hard work builds income. Positioning builds wealth. And positioning means understanding the 116-year-old system designed on Jekyll Island. 7 men on a secret train. Fake names. A private island. They designed a machine that would outlive them all. That machine is still running. It still protects the same interests. And every 10 to 15 years, it still transfers wealth from those who don't understand to those who do. The next transfer is coming. It always does. The only question is, which side will you be on? J.P. Morgan died in 1913. His last words, allegedly, were about his art collection, but his real legacy wasn't paintings. It was a system. A system that made his partners rich. That made their children rich. That made their grandchildren rich. And that is right now working exactly as designed. The Panic of 1907 lasted 36 hours. The system it created will last forever, unless enough people finally understand how it works. Now you do. The question is, what will you do about it?